What's good, y'all? Anderson Emerald here to talk about Dina Asher-Smith. Now, this morning, she announced that she is going to be remaining in Texas and actually going to be training at Baylor in Waco, Texas, under Coach Michael Ford, who, of course, is the head coach at Baylor. He, specifically trains Trayvon Bromell, who, in 2025 has seen, a lot of success, kind of bouncing back after years of injury. He was able to run 9.8 very consistently in the 100. Didn't make the, USA team, but Trayvon kind of got back with his college coach and Michael Ford and was really back on the track. Now, Dina Asher-Smith, after a couple questions around where she was going to go, after leaving Coach Flo, she is now, again, announced, at least via Instagram, that she is going to be training at Baylor under Coach Michael Ford in Waco, Texas. And this is a pretty interesting move. So I want to talk about her move, kind of like a little bit of her history and where she kind of is going to potentially be going, like her potential as it relates to the landscape of the women's 200, and kind of just a little talk about that depth and how challenging it may be for her to really, kind of stand out considering what we've seen over the past couple of years. So just for some context, I did a full video on, her leaving Coach Flo. But prior to Coach Flo, she was, of course, based in Great Britain, and she had been training under her long time coach, I think since she was like 8 years old or something like that, until 2023. So just before the Olympic year, she chose to move over to Austin, Texas, to the University of Texas to train under Coach Flo. And she was training partners with Rashida Adeleke, also with Julian Alfred. And that was kind of the training group that Coach Flo had as that pro group. Now, she was training there through the Olympics, unfortunately didn't medal. She didn't make the 100-meter final. She then finished fourth place in the 200 at the the Paris Olympic Games. This year, she was still training under Coach Flo in Austin, Texas, but just about maybe sometime I think during the British Championships is when it was first confirmed that she is no longer in Austin, Texas, and she had moved back to the UK. And then I got a chance to speak with her while I was in Tokyo for the World Championships, and check out the interview on the City Smack YouTube channel. And she said that things just didn't work out. She was still very hesitant, but she was open about just moving away from the situation that didn't work for her. And now she was back in the UK and trying to figure things out on what the plan would be and where she would be stationed in preparation for Los Angeles 2028, essentially the next Olympic Games, which is the true focus. Remember, I'll talk about her medals in a second, but Dina Asher-Smith has not won a single medal individually at the Olympic Games. She has the relay medals, but she does not have a 100 or 200 meter medal. So that was the question. Now, I think many people assumed that she may be going back. She was stationed back in the UK, and I think many people could have assumed maybe she was going to find another coach either in Europe or in the UK or whatever it may be. I actually might have thought she would have potentially gone to Marco Reali, who's based out of Italy. He trains Amy Hunt. He trains a few other athletes as well. I thought that might be the move. I didn't know if she would go to the US. I mean, you have a certain amount of coaches, especially like Nike coaches, where someone like Dennis Mitchell, I don't think she would have ended up at Dennis Mitchell's group. And then you have a whole bunch of other coaches like Tandra Buford-Bailey. She's an Adidas coach. You have Lance Brahman. He's an Adidas coach who Daryl Nita just moved to recently. You have Raina Ryder, who, controversial, but he's like a Puma coach and he works with different athletes. I don't think she would have gone there. But I didn't see her actually going to Waco, Texas to train under Michael Ford. This is a really, really interesting move. And I think it does speak to maybe the challenges of trying to find a coach that's going to work for you as an individual athlete when there's a relatively limited amount of options. Yes, she could have gone to maybe John Smith, who works with Marie-Josée Talu-Smith. There's a few of them, but when you start to really break down all the sprinters, like the top sprinters in the world, there aren't that many high profile groups. Yes, she could have gone to Jamaica or something, but it starts to whittle down pretty quickly, especially when you're talking about sponsored groups and all these different things. So she moves from Coach Flo in Austin, Texas, now moves to Baylor to train under Michael Ford. And this is going to be an interesting move looking forward to the Los Angeles 2028 Olympic Games, considering the ups and downs that Dina Asher-Smith has faced throughout her career. She, of course, she's almost like a young veteran in a sense. 2015, she was, fifth place in the 200 at the World Championships that year, and she was extremely young back then. I think she might have been 20 years old, or maybe she was turning 20 at the end of that year. So she was 19 years old, I think, at those World Championships in Beijing, finishing fifth place in the 200. Over the subsequent years, she of course was winning medals as part of the relay at the Olympic Games, but she finally came into her own in 2019 when she got the gold medal in the 200 and got the silver medal in the 100 behind Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce. That year, she had run her still standing personal best, 21.88 in the 200 and 10.83 in the 100. Now, Olympic Games, Tokyo, she unfortunately, got injured, wasn't able to progress through the rounds of the 100, didn't run the 200, and I think she did bounce back for the 4x1. Someone could fact check me. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. But 2022, she didn't win she got a personal best in the 100, running 10.83 once again, but wasn't able to get onto the podium. That was when the Jamaica, swept Shelly, Sharika, and Elaine. Then in the 200, she was able to get a bronze medal. So essentially individually, and since then she has not medaled individually in either the 100 or the 200. So she only has those 3 medals in her career. 2019, gold in the 200, silver in the 100, and then 2022, bronze in the 200. Since then, she has always been in the conversation as an athlete who's, potentially, going to get on the podium or potentially is going to run fast. But we haven't seen it come into fruition. Now, there's been times where it's been injuries. There's been times where it's been setbacks. But I think Dina hasn't kind of seen that progression that many of us might have expected from her, considering what she did all those years ago. 2015, again, 5th place, 2019, actually winning a gold medal. And this kind of does have me thinking about how she's going to be able to progress, and will she be able to break through the noise of the women's 200? I think that, like I said, Michael Ford, he's an excellent coach. Obviously, we know what he's able to do at Baylor. He worked with Trayvon Bromell at Baylor prior to, Trayvon's return. So we know that he was able to get, Trayvon to be this legendary athlete. Obviously, Trayvon got injuries. He moved to Florida to train with Raina Ryder, returned to, Coach Ford just this past year in the fall of 2024. And he has had probably his best season, in a couple years now. So obviously, we know that Michael Ford is an extremely talented coach. But Dina Asher-Smith, considering the different, situations that she's been through, her longtime coach got her to, some great success, winning all those medals. Then she moved to Coach Flo, didn't see that success. And what's even interesting is when I interviewed Coach Flo last year in 2024, he said that he was kind of against Dina making the move to him in Austin, especially in the Olympic year, but she seemed insistent on it. Again, we don't know the specific details as to not only why she specifically moved, but also why she left. She didn't go fully in depth, but check out the interview that I did do with her while I was in Tokyo. So Dina Asher-Smith as an individual, will Michael Ford be able to bring out the best in her to get her to a point where she's not only matching her personal best, her 21.8 and the 10.8, but also getting a little bit better, right? Improving on those times. Because as we look at the landscape of essentially both events, those are obviously capable of getting on the podium in the right year. But really, if we look at things, as they are, it's a very, very tough, situation, both in the 100 and the 200, if Dina wants to really get on the podium. Just look at what we saw in the 100 meters, where Melissa Jefferson-Wooden is gone, right? 10.6 is gone. Tina Clayton just got on the podium for the first time at the World Championships, in her first World Championships, running 10.7 for the silver medal, 10.76. And then you had Julian Alfred, who of course is a gold medalist from last year, having run 10.72, but she got injured, between the heats and the semifinals, going into the final, and she eventually ran 10.8 to get the bronze medal. So you're talking about Julian Alfred stepping back, but still essentially matching or getting close to Dina's current personal best. And all 3 of those women are significantly younger than Dina Asher-Smith. Dina Asher-Smith, of course, at the end of this year, next month, she's turning 30 years old. Julian Alfred right now is 24. Melissa Jefferson-Wooden is 24. And then you have Tina Clayton, who's, 21, right? 21, 22. So these athletes are younger, and that's to say nothing of, a Sha'Carri Richardson who might get healthy. That's to say nothing of, who else? Kayla White, TT Terry, of, Sharika Jackson. Even Sharika Jackson herself, she's 31 years old, so just a year older than Dina Asher-Smith. So that's just in the 100, where you probably got to be running 10.7s if you really want to be competitive and being capable of getting on the podium, right? We're not talking pre-2020. It's a whole different era. We're talking about a new generation where I didn't even get to Tia Clayton, who was injured all throughout the year and didn't even make the individual team. So those are things that, you have to take into consideration when you're thinking about Dina Asher-Smith and her potential to get on the 100 podium. The 200 is a little bit different. I also think 21.88 is a very, very strong time and performance, but will it be enough if you see everyone, performing on all cylinders, right? We saw Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, again, gone, right? 21.68 seconds to win gold this year. Obviously, Gabby Thomas and Julian Alfred were injured. So Julian didn't compete in the 200. Gabby Thomas didn't, line up for the World Championships. But both of them have run, Julian Alfred ran 21.71 this year. Gabby Thomas, of course, has run 21.60 and is the Olympic champion and a world silver medalist and Olympic bronze medal. Like, she has those accolades. Add in Shericka Jackson. Now, Shericka Jackson dealt with injuries and setbacks this year. She did run 21 seconds, sub 22 seconds in the semifinals at Worlds, then dropped back to 22 seconds to get the bronze medal. But she, of course, like I said, she's 31 years old. So it's not like she's drastically older than Dina Asher-Smith. And if I'm going to bet on someone to be able to run a faster time, right, in any given race, I'm probably going to look at Shericka Jackson, considering she has at least a little bit more buffer when she's healthy. She's run 21.4 seconds. She's, many people argue the second greatest all time when talking about career. Clearly on time, she is the second best ever with 21.41, 21.44, 21.45, or 21.55. I'm saying she's run 21.4 a bunch of times, 21.48. So all of that kind of makes it a little trickier. Now, you also add in someone like Amy Hunt. Now, Amy Hunt hasn't broken the 22-second barrier like Dina Asher-Smith has, but she was able to get on the podium this year, getting the silver medal behind Melissa Jefferson-Wooden. I think as we look forward to 2027, 2028, Dina Asher-Smith will probably have to make some improvements on her personal best of 21.88, and of course the 10.8 as well, to make sure that she's in the conversation. If we do have some years where there's a step back, then of course that opens the door for Dina to be able to step up and actually insert herself onto the podium. But it gets very, very challenging when you look at the crop of, young athletes. I didn't even mention, Brittany Brown, who I think is the same age as Dina. I didn't even mention Mackenzie Long. I didn't even mention Anavia Battle, right? I didn't even mention, whoever else, might be on the rise and making some progress when talking about the 200 meters in the grand scheme of things. So it's an interesting development and interesting landscape for Dina Asher-Smith to navigate. Obviously, she is one of the most talented athletes in the field. You don't become a world champion or a world silver medalist or whatever it may be if you're not one of the most talented. But considering how things have progressed over the past 5 years, essentially post 2020, it's a different landscape of sprinting right now. And unfortunately, she hasn't gotten herself on the podium outside of the bronze in 2022. But could this move to Baylor be the next step that's necessary for her to get back to those personal bests and potentially improve on those, which would then put her back into the conversation for spots on the podium? But Dina Asher-Smith moving to Baylor, going to be very interesting, trading with Trayvon Bromell. Let me know what you think. As always, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Truly do appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.